Today's review is a bit more special, a bit more personal, and could be a little biased because having driven the Creta, my own Creta, for 8 years, I'm all set to drive the latest 2024 edition of this car. Hyundai is making some very big promises for a model that they have sold over 980,000 units of. So what makes the Creta so popular, and does the latest edition make some very, very big improvements? You're watching HT Auto. I'm Shubhadeep Chakravarti, and this is the first drive review of the 2024 Hyundai Creta. Now, over the years, the pillars on which the Creta has stood on include exterior styling, space and practicality inside, the feature list, as well as drivability. Now, we are going to test the latest edition of the Creta on all of these crucial 4 pillars, starting with, of course, how the new car has been designed. The front of the Creta is really where all the attention has been given, or at least a significant part. The grille that you see here is definitely going to catch your attention immediately. Is it new for the Creta? Absolutely. But is it really new to me? Well, to me it looks like a bit more of a polished version of the grille that you get also on the Venue. Now, many of you may not agree with me, but well, that's my personal opinion. But that said, it still looks quite smart, quite appealing, and complete with the new LED DRL signature here, the sequential lighting here for the turn indicators. It does get a lot more character than before. Now remember, to me, the first gen Creta was still styled perhaps the best because of its sharp lines, and the second generation, well, was very, very curvaceous, too rounded for my personal liking. But the latest edition of the Creta marries both of those and puts out a face that's quite smart. Also because the front bumper here has been reworked and a skid plate has been added for a sporty appeal. But this is also an SUV, and therefore there is a bit more muscle courtesy the updated character lines on the bonnet. Now, in terms of exterior proportions, nothing has changed, so the new Creta continues with its length, width, height and wheelbase. And that's not a bad thing because the Creta has had a decent road presence in the real world. So on the side, it generally looks like a carry forward from the second generation, except for the fact that the alloy design has been given a retweak. Now, depending on which variant you choose, you can get the Creta in either 16-inch wheels or 17-inch wheels. This one is a top end and therefore standing on 17-inch wheels. In terms of what other highlights are there on the side, you get a roof rail in a contrasting shade. It isn't functional, unfortunately, but it's there, looks nice. You get body-colored ORVMs and chrome usage on the door handles. Interestingly, there is very minimal use of chrome, and that's not just from Hyundai and not just on Creta, but manufacturers increasingly are going easy on chrome, unlike in the past, and to me, that's actually several steps in the right direction. Personally and visually speaking, the biggest highlight on the facelift Creta for me is actually at the back. And that's courtesy the stretched LED light bar that you see all the way on the boot door. And you know how this stretched LED light bar is making its way into more and more cars in today's world and times. Even within the Hyundai family, models like the Verna and Venue have it, so why not the Creta too? And complete with the reworked tail lights here and the sequential turn indicators, which, while being very small for my personal liking, quite goes well with the profile of the vehicle. Now, overall, you also get a reworked bumper at the rear, complete with skid plates. You get a brake light at the top, and the profile overall looks quite nice, quite appealing. Open the boot, and there is around 433 liters of cargo space. Nothing has changed here, but over my personal experience of driving the Creta, the cargo area is quite decent, although definitely not segment leading. But what does the Creta offer on the inside, and what are the changes? Come, let's find out. Now, when you step inside the new Creta is when you realize the distance that this model has covered from its initial debut version back in 2015. And of course, you will say that I'm getting a little too nostalgic, but well, blame it on having driven my own Creta for years and years now. But come to this car and what has changed is a whole lot. Primarily, the dashboard design and the layout has been changed completely for a more premium appeal on the vehicle. Do I like it? Yes. And why do I like it? Well, there is an emphasis on a horizontally stretched layout. The dual tone color scheme is actually very pleasing. It creates a sense of airiness for the passenger at the front and the driver. And the aircon design, the vents have been redone and reworked and looks a bit more premium than before. The highlight also is the infotainment screen and the driver display. The infotainment screens remain 10.25 inch both, but now on the new Creta, both of these screens are connected seamlessly within one unique housing, giving it once again a more premium appeal. And the fact that there is a slight curve to it also gets an elevated visual appearance. Now, the main infotainment screen remains as intuitive to use and touch as it has ever been. The display is very crisp. In fact, this car has 360-degree camera and the feed is quite sharp and crisp and precise too. The driver display, in fact, has been redone completely for the Creta and actually now is more on the lines of what the Alcazar offers. Of course, it's all digital, but that was a given. So it looks quite premium as well. The steering wheel layout design has been carried forward, although the material here seems to have been updated just a little bit, in fact upgraded. And the control layout too remain as it was on the Creta, except one major change, which are dedicated controls for ADAS functionality. And yes, the new Creta now comes with level 2 ADAS. But more on that in just a little bit, because I want to also highlight the controls for the air conditioning system, which have been redone here. The Creta now also offers dual zone climate control. Just in case you're still feeling a little too hot, ventilated seats are there on the front for both passengers. It's a feature that has been carried forward. The driver can actually look forward to electronically adjustable adjustment for the seats. In fact, the driver's seat can be controlled for 8-way support and positioning. Now, some of the other highlights on the new Creta are the fact that the seat upholstery colors have been updated. Now looks a bit more premium and upmarket considering the light shade that it gets, complete with the stitching and piping in contrasting colors. So that's great too. You get multiple charging points. You get a Type-C point here on the center console, a 12-volt and a conventional USB point. You get wireless charging pad here at the front, multiple storage areas here, 2 cup holders in the center console, storage area under the armrest and more storage space on the doors. The feature list actually goes on and on and on, and my personal favorite is also a panoramic sunroof which you can control through voice. So check this out. Open sunroof.
Opening the sunroof.
So the sunroof opens and lets in quite a lot of elements. You know, I mentioned how the windows are large on the Creta, have always been, and that complete with this massive sunroof actually gives this vehicle a nice airy feel. But that's for the passengers at the front, but does that translate to space and that airy feel for passengers at the back? Let's find out. I've already mentioned that the proportion dimensions of this car has not changed, and therefore in terms of space at the back, things remain as they have always been. So that's again a decent amount of space for passengers at the back. This seat is positioned to how I like to have it when I'm driving. So it's quite far behind, far back, and yet I have decent amount of knee room. Leg room is just about adequate, and the headroom is actually pretty decent too. What I have always found a little bit of a problem on the Creta is the angle of the seats here at the back, and well, the recline here is a little too much for my liking still. But what works in this car is that you now get these nice soft pillows, so on long journeys this can be quite a useful addition in the car. Other conventional things like, well, the central armrest with cup holders here, or dedicated rear AC vents or Type-C charging points here. Well, all elevate the experience. Now, does the Creta's back seat offer enough space for 3 adults seated next to each other? Well, things like a relatively flat floor bed actually does help the cause, but well, it still isn't the most comfortable for 3 adults at the back, but 2 adults or 2 adults and a kid in the middle, this car will be no problem even on those long journeys. Of course, I have mentioned things like dual zone climate control and ventilated seats at the front. There is no ventilated seat at the back, of course, but to beat the heat, you can also use these manual shades, and that is a very practical addition on this car. Now, the practical addition on this car is also the fact that Hyundai has brought in the 1.5 litre turbo petrol motor on this car, apart from the 1.5 MPI petrol and the 1.5 CRDI diesel. Now, what does the turbo bring to the table? Transmission, performance, and a whole lot more in our drive review. So let's get the Creta on the move. Hyundai has carried forward the 1.5 litre petrol motor and the 1.5 litre CRDI diesel engine, and both of these come mated to multiple transmission choices. But both of these are not what we are driving today, because today we are behind the wheel of the new 1.5 litre turbo petrol motor, new for the Creta, and on this model it comes mated to a 7-speed DCT. Now, there is a whole lot of power that the turbo petrol motor has on offer. In fact, to be precise, 160 HP is what you can get from this motor, and a delicious 253 Newton meters of torque. So clearly, the Creta on paper is a very spirited car. But in the real world, oh yes, it is definitely does translate those numbers out in the real world too. In fact, there is such a linear progression of power till the time you're not pushing the pedal to the metal. But once you do that, there is enormous response from the engine, and the gearbox for the most parts does really well too. But that said, the 7-speed DCT has always been my favorite, but it seems a little dulled down in its aggressive responses, especially on clear, clean stretches like this, where with the sport mode engaged, it takes that fraction extra to slot the right gear and get you the move ahead. Now, of course, if you're not really driving aggressively, you can switch back to the normal mode, which is the default drive mode on the Creta. And for those fuel conscious people, there is the eco mode too. But for now, we'll stick with the sport mode because, well, our highways and the prescribed speed limit allows us to actually floor this car. Now, there is a slight tweak to the suspension setup on the turbo variant, and it is noticeable, especially because for a very brief moment we did also drive the diesel. The suspension on this vis-a-vis the regular petrol and the diesel motor, the one on this is stiffer, so that should actually complement the aggressive drive character that one would sort of extract from the turbo petrol motor. The other tweak to the engineering part of the turbo is the steering itself. The steering on the turbo has a bit more weight, a bit more heft, and that actually helps in controlling the vehicle at high speeds. I like the fact that even at speeds close to the triple digits, making some sharp turns on the Creta was quite in control. Now, the body roll on the Creta is still on the lower side, so that's great too. But essentially, it is all about how stable, how steady the car remains at high speeds. Now, let's talk a little bit about the ADAS technology on the Creta as well. Now, this is level 2 ADAS. There is a camera and a radar system that helps you with a multitude of functions. Some of them that we've tested through our drive of this car are things like lane keep assist, forward collision warning, forward collision mitigation, and really These things can really prove to be quite good in risky highway conditions and are assistive in nature. As I always say when I'm talking about ADAS technology, whether it is perfect for Indian conditions, I'm not so sure, but it does give a big leg up to cars that offer ADAS vis-a-vis cars that do not. So there you have it, the 2024 Hyundai Creta. Back in 2016, when I was out shopping for a mid-size SUV, options were still limited and Creta emerged at the time an obvious choice. But over the years, the field of play is now littered with a lot of players competing for space, while some underline their hybrid engine technology, others underline their styling, features, and some with their 5-star global NCAP crash test ratings. The new Creta, though, continues to promise itself as an all-round package. The 4 fundamental pillars I spoke about earlier, in terms of its looks, the Creta is several steps ahead of the preceding model, although personally I think the Seltos still looks slightly sportier. In the Creta's cabin, space and practicality is still right up there. In terms of feature list, the list actually gets extended now, and level 2 ADAS is a big shot in the arm for the model. And in terms of drivability, the 1.5 litre turbo with DCT is great as well. What do you make of the 2024 Hyundai Creta? Do let us know, and do not forget to check out our in-depth written review on HD Auto. For now though, that's all the time we have. As always, thank you so much for your time, and as always, drive safe, stay safe. Thank you.